All right, welcome back. We are COMP229 in the summer 2021 semester at Centennial, and it's week 4, part 1 of our broadcast. This week we're talking about MongoDB and a couple of other things, but I want to make sure that you guys have everything you need for assignment 1, which is what we're going to be talking about too. So we're sitting again at week 4. This week, assignment 2 has been released or will be released if it's not already. And it's going to be due week 6. So the funny thing about assignment 2, because we're just getting on to finishing up assignment 1 now at this point, is that assignment 2 builds on assignment 1. So if you don't do assignment 1 properly, then assignment 2 will be more challenging for you. Hopefully you followed what I asked you to do in the videos, and you can make assignment 1 happen for Friday. This Friday at midnight is when it's due. Okay, so you guys not hearing me, or hello? You guys should hear me, right? Yeah, I told you it's kind of a weird. I've got this like weird audio thing happening right now where it keeps cutting in and out, right? So yeah, what I was saying is assignment 1 is due on Friday at midnight, and assignment 2 has been released, and it's building on assignment 1. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Hopefully the YouTube connection got that one. All right, so that is where we're sitting right now. We're sitting at week 4. Again, we're 3 short weeks away from the midterm test. So the thing for the midterm test is it's just covering all the stuff we've talked about from week 1 to 6. So everything that we have inside of the PowerPoint slides and the course shell and all that kind of stuff are the things that we have, that are going to be tested on for assignments, for assignment 1 and 2, right? And for the midterm test. So there's a midterm test assignment. So just to really briefly talk about midterm tests, we're kind of a little bit off from that, but the way the midterm test comes on is like this. It goes, you get the almost like a weekly assignment. So it's a week assignment that you get on the early part of the week, Sunday or Monday, and then it's due on the Friday or Saturday. That's typically how we do it for the midterm test. So you have a whole week to complete it. And basically what it is kind of the same things that you've made for assignment 1 and 2, the technologies that we're talking about, but it's all wrapped into one little assignment for your midterm test. So please, this is where it's really important that you guys focus on getting the technologies right for assignment 1 and 2. There's a lot of little things. We talked about NodeMon. We talked about Yarn last week. We talked about a bunch of stuff, and all those things are going to be required. So hopefully you guys are able to hear me. I know that Patrick, are you still having issues, or are we not good? Am I still coming in and out, like cutting in and out, guys? I'm so sorry if I am. It's better on YouTube. Okay, great. I'm not sure what's going on with Zoom. Zoom is a little bit more sensitive, it seems, than YouTube is. So that's why I gave you the YouTube link too, so you can always kind of watch me concurrently. All right. So last week we really talked about installing Express and the Express generator and how that works. We also discussed basic routing really briefly with Express. EJS views we created. The idea with EJS views is HTML pages are created dynamically via the EJS template that we used last week, right? So that's what it works like. Serving static files, well, we kind of added the client folder and node modules folders onto the path, so you don't have to search for them, and that's what I kind of demonstrated last week. I've also installed and supported Bootstrap and Font Awesome last week. And again, I got a question earlier that was, can I use Bootstrap and Font Awesome for my portfolio assignment for assignment 1? And the answer is yes, you can. The other thing is that we also created a main navigation bar, or in general, main navigation strategy that we kind of incorporated the first part of last week. Today, we're going to continue with that. But this week, just as a tour, remember that this isn't exactly I'm not going to cover everything that is discussed in the course shell. I'm going to guide you through it. So this week, your homework would also include things like understanding what MongoDB is. That's 22 minutes. That's from last year, but still viable and reasonable for today. Connecting to MongoDB with Mongoose, how to do that, and as well as basic read operations with Mongoose. That's what I want you to look at for this week coming up. This is your homework reading, if you will, or watching. So that is something that I want you to take care of this week. If you haven't had a chance to look at this information already, and again, it opened up earlier today, then you should be able to do it before the week's end. So that way you've got some basic stuff. I will cover some of this today, but really my goal for today is getting you ready for assignment 1. That's really my goal, because this session here that we get together is really assignment help, technical help, me guiding you through stuff. That's what this is all about. And it's more about that than regurgitating or restating everything that we did from last year. All right, that doesn't make any sense. Although I will be using TypeScript through the entire time, it doesn't mean that you can't use JavaScript. You can certainly use that. I would accept either one or the other. All right, so that is the scope of what we're doing this week. One thing else, kind of a few things that we're going to be talking about this week other than MongoDB, which is kind of how to install MongoDB. I'm going to talk about that a little bit briefly. I talked about that in the first week. And then also how to push our project to Heroku. That's going to be an important piece, right? We have our project from last week. I'm going to start with this week. How do I push my project to Heroku? How do I do that? As well as the idea of continuous integration and deployment, which is something that this is what Heroku allows us to do. Again, as a reminder, assignment 1 is due Friday at midnight. One thing that I was speaking with my colleagues about, so that was Professor Nika. He's the coordinator of our programs here at Centennial. He basically stated that some of you are having issues from a support perspective when it comes to YouTube and that kind of thing. And to basically make it more inclusive, he's asked that I also allow you guys to upload stuff directly on eCentennial for your video, the video portion yourself, the demo video. So now I'm going to allow that. So for Friday, if you can't make it up on YouTube, that's fine. Just record a short 5-minute video, and then if you upload it on eCentennial, I will support that going forward for this assignment and the others. It's a little bit longer for me to watch, but if you're nervous about, and you're in a country right now that you're watching remotely, and you can't physically attend, you're not in Canada, or you don't have access to YouTube and that kind of stuff, then it's totally fine. You can still push things up to eCentennial, and I'll watch it that way. You can also choose to use Google Drive or OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive. As long as I get a link that I can click on that works, then you're good to go. If I don't get anything, like no video, that would be bad. So please don't do that. I need a video from you for this thing. It's required. It's mandatory for your assignment 1 submission details. So please make sure you submit some kind of video, either a video link or something that you've pushed on to eCentennial. Okay, that's assignment 1. I'll also make a short announcement about this later on today. You'll see an announcement comes out that'll talk about how to do that and what my expectations are. Also, assignment 2 details have been released. Assignment 2 is due week 6. So again, if you go up on eCentennial, then you should be able to go to the course shell, and there should be a section about assignment 2. Assignment 2 also has its own video, a little 5-minute video that I made for you guys on the requirements of assignment 2. I'll also be talking about assignment 2 in more detail at another time. But your submission details, and again, if we go to the assignment just briefly, I want to talk about this for a second. And if I go to assignments, and if I go to the assignment 2 details, you'll see that there's 2 things that are different. Assignment 2 is also worth 15% of your final grade, but this one is due Friday, June 18th at midnight, so week 6. It's also on a Friday, and there should be an updated PDF document that details all that stuff. So if you look at the assignment 2 details, then this should have the new date. For the most part, it's just pointing to June, the new date in June, which is June 18th. The assignment itself hasn't changed. It's still the same as what it was before. So please take a look at the video today, if you haven't had a chance to do that already, about what assignment 2 is all about. Okay, all you're doing is really adding authentication on top of your Express portfolio, which is kind of a contrived example of getting you to know how to do authentication. These are all pieces that are required for what we're going to be doing in the second half of semester, which is building a project with you and your team. All right, so that is what we're doing for assignment 2. Any questions before we move on from this? All right, so let's get to the technical piece now. So that was kind of a brief about admin. That's kind of administration, what we're doing. And I want to do the technical piece. So I want to be talking about MongoDB. But first, before we even talk about MongoDB, I want to download our project and use that as a starter for this week's project. So how do we do that? Well, let's go up on GitHub. So again, I'm going to go to GitHub. And if you look at Centennial, last week we had a project that we did, COMP229 M2021 week 3D. That is the only GitHub project we did because, again, we didn't have an A or B or C because we had Victoria Day on Monday. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be basing our project off of this one, week 3D. So let's do that. So I'm going to go in here. And I'm just going to download the code from here, okay? Material.io. Yes. All right. So let's continue here and talk about it. So if I click download, and when I do that, it's going to take me to download my zip archive, right? It's going to kick open my zip archive in File Explorer in a second when it's done downloading. There it is. And what I want to do with this one is I want to kind of copy this zip archive, or cut. Let's just do a cut and paste. So cut, and then what I want to do is I want to go to my desktop where I have your stuff under Centennial COMP229 and go to here and paste. So this is kind of what you would be doing, downloading it fresh. I could have copied week 3D and done all that stuff, but I'm just going to download like you would download today. All right. So I go here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract here to week 3D. I'm going to keep this open because I'm going to do this again later on. And so week 3D is what I'm going to be working with. I'm just going to rename this to week 3B because you got, sorry, week 3C because you guys are the C team, if I'm not wrong. So if I click on it once and I say week 4C, right? You guys are the C team. The B team is after you, and the A team is in the morning on Wednesday, which is not by me. It's hosted by, Professor Nicoletta. She'll be doing that one. So that would be this one. This is a new one, 4C. So if I double click here, you can see that this is the project, right? So this is where I'm going to start with you guys today, week 4C. All right, now that I have downloaded the project, let's do some modifications. So I'm going to kick off my Visual Studio Code. Again, that's kind of an important piece. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop week 4C in here. And just as a reminder, what we did last week, once you drag and drop your project inside of your Visual Studio Code, you'll get Visual Studio Code spinning like this sometimes. What is happening is Visual Studio Code is checking to see if there's any requirements or that kind of stuff that'll happen. And it won't take long. On the left, we have to make some changes because we're making this week 4C, this project, and we were starting with a project from week 3, right? So a couple of changes we have to make. One is let's go into the README file first. So my README file says week 3. Let's change this to week 4C. That's you guys, right? And for other people watching this, you'd be changing it to your week or whatever it is. Again, this is good practice to follow along with me as we go. I think it's important. And then the next thing, once we've done that, let's save that. So that's the change, right, that we're making. Package.json, the package.json file is your manifest that basically details all the stuff that we had installed in the project, all right? So I want to make this so that it updates. So we're going to go, this is the first time we're going to change our version. We're going to go to version 002. So minor version change, we're going to go to week 4, right? And here it's going to say week 4. And in my repository, you're going to see that the repository is my repository. That's what I'm pointing to. You would substitute your name and the repository for your repository in your name, not mine. This is where I'm the originator of this thing. So this is what these are here. So I'm just going to change this to week 4C because this is the one that I'm going to be using today with you, right? But you would change yours to whatever yours is. Okay. So whatever your, this part here is your account. My account is Centennial College. Your account would be, whatever your account name is. Okay. So these are all the modules. So we did 2 things last week. One thing was we have a group of dependencies, and then we have a group of dev dependencies. And I talked about the difference. What is the difference between dependencies and dev dependencies? Anybody know? Can anyone explain the difference between dependencies and dev dependencies? And I'll see if anyone can come up with that difference. You can use the chat, or if you're on YouTube, you can use the chat on YouTube as well, right? So can anyone come up with a difference between the two? Dependencies versus dev dependencies. What's the difference? Yahya says debugging. Yeah, kind of. But really what I want you to think about, guys, yeah, for dev, for sure. But I want you to think about dependencies. You can't run your project without them. All right. So without these dependencies, your project won't even run. Okay. That's number one. And then the second piece, it's not about just debugging. These pieces help you with better tooling and debugging. And you don't need them. This is the next thing you have to talk about. If you're on an interview and they say, what's a dev dependency compared to a dependency? Dev dependencies are for the developer, right? So they are helper tools and functions that make it easier for you, to develop. And sometimes it's not just this stuff, not just types, but other things that are not just used for debugging, but other technologies that you can include. For example, a packager or something else like that that we might use later on in this course. All right, so that's what dev dependencies are. And the difference are you need these, you don't really need these ones. If I didn't include dev dependencies, I'm still good, right? I can still run my project without them. All right, so that's the first thing. So save that. So we've saved my package.json, save my README file. tsconfig.json is not going to change. This is the stuff that makes your TypeScript run. Again, for those people who don't want to use TypeScript, you don't have to use this. You can follow the videos on eCentennial and use the tutorials through there. They're perfectly fine, and there's nothing wrong with using those videos. For the most part, they'll work. All right. There might be some minor modifications because we're in 2021 and not in 2020, but I think you should be fine running most of the examples right from the eCentennial course shell. So that's kind of an important piece. All right, so let's make this run first, and so we know it works. So again, I'm going to press Control backtick, which is the character underneath your escape key, or you can go to View and then Control backtick to the terminal window. Notice the terminal window gave me a command, right? If I don't want a command and I want a PowerShell, I can just go to here and then just go PowerShell, and that adds another PowerShell. I can always go back to my command and delete it. You can have as many or as few terminal windows as you want. I like using the integration because it makes it easier for you guys to see what's happening, and it's quick. I don't have to have multiple windows here. But you don't have to do it this way. You could have a separate terminal window instead of, or a command prompt instead of using this integration if you feel more comfortable that way. And again, for me, it doesn't matter, right? Look, I'll take even further, one step further. Let's suppose you don't even like Visual Studio Code and you want to use something else, right? That makes more sense. As long as I can look at the files and they're shaped in the same way, the structure is like my structure that I've shown you, you're good to go, right? You don't have to use Visual Studio Code. I'll tell you though, that it's the de facto standard these days for creating web apps. That's just the way it is. Everyone uses Visual Studio Code compared to any other editor out there. More than Visual Studio, more than Atom, more than anything else that you can possibly find. Visual Studio Code is the most common one that's right now because it's risen to something that's really popular. Okay, so that's why I'm using it. Okay, so this is this structure. We're ready to go. Let's run nodemon now and see if it can work just the way it is. So nodemon, remember, if everything works, it's just going to say starting this. Now, sometimes what happens is if your start script that's in here, if you go to your package.json, if your start script is incorrect, nodemon will not function properly. So make sure that the start script has whatever your entry point is, to your app. Your entry point is your index.js, not the index.ts like me, index.js, because remember that Node and the browser can only read JavaScript, not TypeScript files. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now you're like, wait, where's our browser? Well, we got to launch another browser. So I'm going to do that here in Chrome. I'm going to launch another browser here for local hosts. And you can see that localhost 3000 is going to show you what we did last week. So this is what you should have right now. I'm going to use, just to position this on the screen properly, I'm going to use the window button and right arrow that positions it to the right. And then it brings up this little menu. I'm going to choose, there's my OBS, what I'm recording with, and so on. And I'm going to bring up this one as the left side. So the left side is going to be my project. The right side is going to be my browser. And this is a great way to work. Okay, great. And you can also see that the browser is responding nicely. Cool. Excellent. So this I know is working. Let's also press Control-Shift-B. So again, for those people that are watching, it's Control-Shift-B. And then Control-Shift-B, what it does is it transpiles between TypeScript and JavaScript for those people who are watching with TypeScript. So Control-Shift-B, and again, I highly recommend this because it's a great workflow. And you can use the watch task, not the build task, but the watch task to basically transpile your TypeScript to JavaScript in real time. So it'll do it as I change stuff, it'll transpile. So I've got two terminals now. I've got a Node terminal that watches for my, my server changes, and I've got a watch task that watches for my TypeScript changes. These are pretty good, two little things that are running here in Visual Studio Code. That's why I love using it. Okay, great. So this is what's happening here, and I've got my TypeScript stuff. And you can see it restarted a bunch of times. Why? Because it recompiled everything. As soon as I ran the transpiler, it recompiled everything. And so because of that, we had NodeMon restarting, and everything's good. Okay, so that is how we're working right now. And one thing to note is, if you notice here on the right, there's this little hamburger, this little button here, and you don't see the entire nav bar. Why is that? Well, because we're in a smaller format. I'm not in a wide screen format. I've got this right now, and this hamburger appears because we're using Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a mobile-first framework, CSS framework, that allows us to kind of make this compatible for our phone. So for example, if I had this as a phone size, something that looks like this, oops, let's try that again. Let's suppose we had this in phone size, not that one, but this one. You can see that what will happen is this will adjust size. Let me just do that again. Here, I'll just do it manually. And so it'll adjust the size of your screen this way. You can also make it so that it mimics a phone. If you're a mobile app developer, the terminal window itself, if I go to inspect, can also mimic a phone size as well. Like there's a lot of little things you can do to make this look like a phone. If you notice over here where it says toggle device toolbar, I can turn on the device toolbar and it will create a kind of a mimic a bunch of different phones. This is built into Chrome. I haven't done anything here. You should all get this as well. So let's say, for example, I want to mimic an iPhone 6, 7, or 8 Plus, which a lot of people have that size. We can do that. And now what's going to happen is it will be the size of an iPhone exactly. It'll be like an iPhone in terms of layout. So this is what this does. And again, if you don't like that, you can always refer back. You can always go back to this. And, you know, you can kind of turn this off and on where you can mimic the size of your phone, okay? It's a kind of a toggle that you can put on. So pretty cool stuff that's built in. We're going to get to this again and again, the toolbar here. Again, you can get to that by right-clicking anywhere on your screen and going to Inspect or Control-Shift and I. Control-Shift-I will do it as well. So we're going to do that. So if I press Control-Shift-I, that'll give us the inspector, and we can look at the console, or we can look at other things, okay? But let's make this the normal size. So again, I'm going to maximize the screen so you can see this the way it is. The one thing that we're getting a response is sometimes we get this response that's in red that says the favicon is not found. That's okay, just ignore this one. This is just a favicon that we're listening for, and we can get rid of this error later on. If we install a favicon, if you look at what that is, it's a little icon that comes in the top left corner of your screen. If we have a favicon, it'll go there, but we don't have one. That's why it's giving us this 404, and we don't care about that. It's not important, okay? All right, so that is our page, and we have different elements. We have elements. If I want to inspect my page, these elements, I want you to think about this, have been created for us by using the template. So if you look at the head, here's the head of the template. This is something that's been created for us, right? As well as the body tag where our navigation is, and our bottom nav. All this stuff has been smashed together by the use of the EJS view engine. This is not really an HTML page that exists, right? We're creating this HTML page on the fly. Sources also are important to look at. It shows us our active scripts. Here's our app.ts as well as our app.js. You can look at sources. You can inspect sources, network. You can see how it goes on the network, performance, memory, application, and so on. There's a lot of extra stuff here. We're not going to touch upon all these things, but we're going to look at elements a lot and console. So those are the two places we're going to look at on the browser side. All right, so that is your browser. I'm going to switch back to VS Code for a second. Here's my VS Code, and let's make this maximize. If I press the window and the up button twice, you're going to get a maximized view of your application. This is where we want to start. Last week, we talked about putting this up on GitHub. Let's do that again. So again, I'm going to go Command, Control, backtick, and notice that there's two. I'm going to make another PowerShell. So I've got three now. I've got my NodeMon. I've got my second one, which is the watch task for TypeScript. And I got the third one, which is my PowerShell, which I'm going to use right now. And in my PowerShell, I want to do a couple things. I want to put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to say, I'm going to issue a command that's git init, right? Git init, again, is the first command, and initialize the repository, a hidden .git folder inside of your folder structure. That's the first thing we do, right? Then I want to do a git add dot. Git add dot, if everything works, adds all your files to the staging area, like we talked about before. Then we're going to do a git commit. -m for message, and its initial commit. And some people like to put first commit as well. All those things are good. Let's press enter for that. Okay, so we're doing that. That's locally, we've created a first commit or an initial commit for our pages. Great. Next, what I want to do is I want to put this up on GitHub. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to go up to GitHub, and I'm going to go to Centennial. You're going to go to your account. And I'm going to make a brand new repository, right? And I'm not going to make this repository private. I'm going to make it public. I'm going to call this repository COMP229 in the summer 2021 semester. And it is week 4C. I'll be okay, week 1. Week 4C, and then press enter. And then what this is going to do is it's going to give me an empty container. That's what it's going to do for my repository. It also gives me steering instructions. If I copy these things, it'll create my repository locally. But what I really want is these 3 lines of code right here, right? So I want to add the origin remote, I want to add the branch, and I want to push it up. These 3 lines of code, or these 3 lines of code, however you want it, are the 3 lines I need. I don't need these ones because I made these ones happen by myself. So all I need is these 3 lines of code, okay? So let's do that. So let's grab these 3 lines of code, copy them, go back to your command prompt or terminal and right-click and paste them. It pastes it all in, and then all I need to do is press enter. And if you've logged in and you put your credentials in, it'll push this up to your repository online. Okay, so now this is step 1. We've kind of have our repository up online, and if I go up on GitHub, and if I refresh, you can see that clearly we have a repository that's up now on GitHub. And here I'm going to copy and paste the repository link for you guys. So if you wanted to follow along and check if your code matches my code, there it is. All right, that's for people who are on online. And let's see if I can actually add this in as something that is on here as well. I'm just looking at YouTube for a second. And I'm hoping that I can do the same thing here on YouTube, so that way, maybe not. I can't. Right. Anyway, so, but that's it. So that's kind of gives you the link. This is the link that you need right here. And I'm going to take this link here as well and put it on our course shell at eCentennial. So here in eCentennial, I'm going to go back to content and I'm going to go into our content for today, which is week 4. And there's a section in our content online, right, which is GitHub repos. I'm making a new one for you guys. So create a link. And I'm going to put the link in there and it'll say, GitHub repo for week 4C. That's you guys, and then press enter. And that'll give you guys the link on eCentennial as well if you're following this recording online. Okay, so that's where it is, week 4C. You can get it if you're watching this thing. Okay. Again, this is for the first half of semester. So if you are watching this in the second half for some reason, or another time, then you may not have access to this link. Please just use this link right here as the link that you need for GitHub. All right, so then one thing is, now that we have this link, we can put this up on Heroku. So one thing I did last week is in the recordings, I said you need to sign up for Heroku. So let's do that today. If you haven't had a chance to do that, please sign up for Heroku right now. So I'm going to go into incognito window and go to Heroku. This is a new sign up for you guys, right? Heroku is a great little platform. It's free to sign up. It's built by Salesforce, or usually now it's owned by Salesforce anyway. And the great thing is you can sign up to Heroku for free, and it's a great option. For the project, you can also do it with Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google Platform or some other online provider. And what it'll allow you to do is kind of put your site live on the internet. This is what we want to do. We want to make this live. So I'm going to use Heroku for this, but I already have an account. So let's go do that together. So I'm going to go to my account for Heroku. So if I type in Heroku, it's going to take me into my account. Let's log in, right? And let's go in there. So what I'm going to do, you see I have a lot of these things. Let's make a brand new one. And when you go into your account, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to make a brand new, kind of a web app. So I'm going to click new, create new app. And in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this new app, which is going to be called COMP229 in the summer 2021 semester. And it's week 4C. And then press, it says choose a region in the United States and press create app. And then when I do that, it's going to give me this empty space. All right. And what this empty space allows me to do is it says I can choose a pipeline, but kind of pipelines are outside of our course requirements. So I'm not going to talk about that. But we have these 3 options. I can do a Heroku Git deployment, or I can connect to GitHub, or I can use a container registry by Heroku CLI. We're going to use GitHub, this one. Click on that. And when I do that, it's going to say, okay, so what GitHub account do you want to connect to? And I want to connect to Centennial College, of course. You will connect to yours. And if you don't have one here, you're going to have to register one and follow the steps. Heroku will get you to add permissions for GitHub so that you can access your GitHub repositories through Heroku, right? So you have to kind of approve Heroku for that kind of thing. And then in here on my search, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the repository name, or I can just search for one, but I know what it's called. It's called COMP229. Yours will be different in the summer 2021 semester, and it's week 4C. And if I search for that, it should come up with a match. There it is. This is the one I just made. Right now, what I can do is just click on this connect button. And the connect button, what it'll do is it'll allow me to connect my GitHub repository directly to Heroku. All right, so let's do that now. So let's click connect. And when I do that, it'll connect to Heroku. What you want to do now is the next step. So once you've connected to Heroku, on the bottom where it says choose a branch to deploy, we're going to choose that branch. But we're going to update this because originally, I'll tell you right now, most likely it's not going to work. And I'll explain why in a second. So it's going to say wait for CI to pass before deploy. I'm just going to say enable automatic deploys. And I'm also going to say down here, deploy branch, where we can watch it live. And I'm going to show you hopefully we'll see it fail before it passes. And I want to show you this because there's some issues. And this is your little documentation on what to do. Notice what it does is it's trying to figure out what to do. If it fails, that's okay. If it passes, all the better. But one thing it's looking for is an engine to build your package with. It doesn't know what the node engine you're using, nor does it know the NPM engine you're using, nor the yarn engine you're using. It doesn't know any of these things. But somehow it's able to work anyway. Now this is new for Heroku. Before it didn't work at all. Now that it's done, that was my little debugging that Heroku's done. I can just click on view, and if everything went well, then we should see the site live. So now for the people that are here, this is my site live on Heroku. This is my live site on Heroku. You should be able to click on this right now, and it should work for you, okay? And what this means is that I can deploy my site anywhere pretty much in the world, as long as I get Heroku support there in that part of the world, we're good to go. Okay, now this is my first question. Are you with me, my friends? And if you are, awesome, check mark. If you're not, X, if you have a problem. Let's see what you can do. Okay, I got Shnedu, you're good, right? Anybody else? I got Anthony, Ajafera, you're good too. Okay, let's see why, Clayton. We're going to talk about why, but this is good. So if you're good, please make sure you can do this. Can you do this part, Clayton? This part right here. If you can't do this part, then you won't be able to upload everything else. This is the first part. Okay, so this works. This is a great test for you, because there might be something that's stopping yours from working. Okay, and you need to follow the precepts here that I've done. This is the first step. If you can't do this, nothing else will work. Number one. Okay, something else I have to mention, guys. Thank you for that feedback. Something else I should mention is this. When you put stuff up on Heroku, all right, what happens sometimes is if you don't have the right pathing, for example, if I click About, I should get the About page. If I click Projects, you should get the Projects page. If I get Services, you should get the Services page. Contact, I should get the Contact page. If I don't have the right pathing, what might happen is you won't get images. None of the images will show up, and none of this stuff will work. And that's because of the pathing, relative path in your project. Let's go back to your project and take a look at that. So in your project, notice that I'm going to be using in my my index.ts file, it uses relative path /app, right? And so on. And let's also update this to week 4C as the debug part for the server. It's not really that important, but whatever. And the other thing that it does is in my app.ts, it uses relative path /roots. One thing that's really weird is when I go to my views, under views, and if I go to index.ejs, which is my template engine that I'm using my EJS that for the template engine, and index is my template. Notice that here I got /bootstrap or just /Fort Awesome. There is no node modules because node modules is on the path. If somehow you have something else in here, sometimes that can cause an issue. For example, if I did /bootstrap, that would be wrong. Same thing with any of these things, that would also be wrong. So make sure yours matches mine. That could also cause a problem. All right, so this is the first piece. Now that we have this and you're up and running on Heroku, you're pretty golden, guys. This is the first step that you need. And if you look at the requirements that I've put up for your assignment, you need to be up live, right? So this is kind of a requirement that I'm giving you. I'm showing you how to do it. Let's talk about some things that can go wrong and some ways of fixing it. So if I go to COMP229, one thing I have, let's talk about that assignment 1 again in brief, right? I want to do that for you guys so we can talk about it. So again, due this week on Friday, there's a bunch of stuff about you. Some people have asked me some questions that they don't know what to do with. Example, do I need a custom logo, Tom? Yes, you do. What if I don't hand it in? Well, then you lose 2 marks, right? In my homepage, you asked me for a mission statement. What is a mission statement? Look it up. A mission statement is about you. You know, it kind of talks about what you want to do. It's almost like, what are you about? Why are you a developer? Talk about what you want to do, as a developer. A little bit about you, your name and your image. Some people said, well, I really don't want to use my legal name and my image. Do I have to do it? Well, at the end of the day, this is your portfolio. And if you want to get a job in Canada, at least, a lot of times you need to share your legal name on your resume anyway. And this gives you a chance to put this up. Some people also include in this, because it looks like it's not much in here, this About Me page. I also asked you to put together your resume in PDF format. Your resume is like a shortened version of your CV that only talks about, it's a very specific version with the latest information, the last 3 jobs that you've worked at and so on, and your experience. Again, if you're someone who's making a resume and you're doing a course this semester or next about business, about making your resume and so on, or something like that, if you've ever taken a course, you know that the first part of your resume is usually some kind of about you, your address information, your contact information, that kind of stuff. You can include that, some parts of these, in your About Me page. Someone had asked me last time I did their portfolio piece, what if I wanted to add pieces of my resume in my portfolio instead of using a PDF? I mean, okay, that's fine too, but the PDF is a quick way of an employer or somebody who likes you to download your PDF, and they can have everything in one place. They don't have to go to your page. So a PDF is just a link to a document. That's all it is, that would appear in your asset somewhere. That's all you're going to do, right? Projects. What about this? I've had some feedback on this one too. Tom, I have no projects. I don't work on any projects. I've only done school. Great. So talk about some assignments that you've done that you really liked, right? Talk about something. This is an opportunity for you to express your work, something that you're interested in doing, or even something you're interested in learning about. That's something you should put in here, all right? So don't worry about it if you don't have real projects. Talk about interests, whatever. And then what you need, though, is what it says here, which is you need images and information for at least 3 projects you wish to highlight. So there must be some kind of images in here. These are, by the way, the stuff I'm asking for you to do here are the minimum requirements. That means if you want to add additional information, pages, buttons, anything to make your portfolio piece even more interesting, it's totally cool to do that, and I 100% support it, no problem. Services page. What services do you offer? Could you make a web app? Could you do a mobile app? Could you program in C#? What do you rate yourself, from that? Maybe add some images that make this more appealing to look at. Don't just make it a blank page with one thing. And your contact page, one thing that we have to do is it should have some kind of form. It says a short interactive form that allows the user to send you a message. I'm going to build this with you today, right? So this little short interactive form, how do we do that? Because it's required. The rest is using Heroku and structuring things properly, using the Express generator. Internal documentation is your kind of information about you and that kind of stuff, which is more comments. And then putting up on GitHub, we just did that. I mean, if you just did what I did, and if you use this template, you get 8 marks free. I'm paying you to put it up on GitHub and Heroku, really. I mean, it's really that simple. But you need to work with your project. So it's not just a backup you're doing on GitHub. If you only upload and you only have 1 commit, then you're going to lose a couple marks here because you're not using it properly, right? Then you make your short video afterwards, and it's all about how your project works. The video should be no longer than 5 minutes, okay? So please don't make it so it's like a 100-minute video or something crazy. It's too long, and it shouldn't be that big. So that is what's required for your project. Let's do the contact page now, and let's see how that can be done. So one thing we talked about in the video, in the requirements, is that if you go up here where it says Express and Node, and it talks about the requirements, it says, I want you to use Express and Node and EJS templating. And it says, what I want you to do is use routing, which is kind of what we did already with res render. We did that. And your site will use a new structure created by the Express generator, and you have to update it where you have some public routes and views, JavaScript and CSS. And what I go down here is on item D in part 3D, this is where people get confused. They're like, wait, what does this mean? Do I have to really use partials? Yeah, you do. How do I do that? How do I use partials? Let's do it right now. This is where we're going to start our partials. Again, I talked about this, in the video, but we'll do it together right now. Again, this whole day today is about assignment 1 and getting you your marks so you get 100% for me on Friday. Okay, let's get this done. So cool. So let's go back into, your Visual Studio Code. Here it is. And how do you do partials and what do partials mean? Well, right now your index.ejs basically serves up everything to everybody for everything, right? And it'd be great if I could break up my navigation bar and my bottom navigation and my container depending on which page I went to, right? So this is something of a different way of doing things than what I'm doing here. This is basic, what we did last week. Now we're going to extend this paradigm and include partial views. So views that are kind of created as little components. So I need 2 folders, okay? So up here where it says views, please let's make 2 folders. One of them is going to be called components and the other one is going to be called content. Let's do that today. So first, let's do that. I'm going to make 2 new folders. So one is called components and the other one is going to be called content. So views, content, and then whatever the contents are going to be, views, components, and whatever the components are going to be in there, okay? So in components, this is where I wanted to break up. And how would you know how to do this? Well, let's get an example from EJS. Remember, we're using EJS. It's not something that's new. It's not, I didn't make EJS. It's been around for a while. Let's take a look at that. So let's say if I go to EJS, and the site for this is ejs.co. I'm just going to take this and copy it into our little chat, ejs.co. If you go to EJS and if you go to get started, it'll tell you how to install it. If I was going to do it by myself, use it without Express. It's not really what we want, but let's keep going. And it says browser support, how to do browser support. And then here we go into docs. This is very simple. Whenever I use EJS or, this embedded JavaScript is what it is, you use these little marks. This left then % and %greater sign is kind of an area where you can inject kind of like a pseudo JavaScript that goes in here. And what you can do is you can inject things like variables and a bunch of stuff inside of the EJS template engine. So that's one thing that EJS is used for. And it can also be used to do other things. For example, if I want to, these are different kinds of tags, opening tags and closing tags, right? So what you can do is if I just want to inject a variable, I can output the value of a variable into the template. That's what this does, right? I can also do other things in here, and we're going to talk about some of these. For example, outputs the unescaped value into the template. That's the minus sign, right? And I can also trim the data that's incoming here as well. So these are a bunch of little scriptlets that we're going to be using throughout the entire time. The other one we can do is we can do an include. And what include will allow us to do is exactly what we want. We want to include a template, right, that's inside of EJS. So we're going to use the include method. That's what's built into EJS. And we're going to do this include, right? And this include is going to inject our partial in the page. Okay, let's go back up and do that. So we're going to use this include syntax right here. Let's do that. So at the top, first of all, in order for me to do an include of anything, I need to have something to include. So let's do a couple things. Let's make 2 things. Let's make a header .ejs in content. So new file. Header.ejs, and let's do a footer.ejs here as well. So we'll do a footer.ejs. There we go. So header and footer. And in that header, which is empty right now, I want to go back to my index.ejs and I want to strip out the navbar piece. So this navigation section, this part, I want to take the actual code from it, just this code snippet right here, right? I want to cut it out. And I want to paste it inside of my header.ejs. Okay, now this header is not just this. Obviously, there's other stuff we can put in here. But for me, follow me here. I just want to put this inside of the header. So just your links, right, is what I'm putting in here, just this stuff. And save. And then I want to do the same thing for the footer. The footer, I'm going to go back to my index.ejs, and where it says bottom nav, I want to cut this piece out, cut it, and I'm going to go back to my footer, and I want to paste it in. So it's just a little code snippet. That's what it is. Awesome, and save. Great. Now what I want to do is I want to inject that stuff. But before, I want to put it inside of a header element. I want to use the header element. Right now, notice that I'm being detected as EJS. If I want to use Emmet and I don't want to write code by myself, I can just simply go down to EJS if you've installed that and select HTML. I've done this last week, but I'll do it again this week. When I do that, then what happens is if I start typing header and press tab, it'll actually do a header for me. And inside there is where I want to do my first include. So I want to do the same thing. I want to say less than %. Less than %, I'll be okay. If I can type minus, right? And then include. And I want to include where my stuff is. Look at the example that they have here inside of this. It just does a single quote and then the path to where you're including. What we want to do here is we want to include the path in single quotes, right, up the chain. So in my index.js, I want to go into components. So I want to do /components, right? And inside of components, I want to look inside of there. And I have my, if I start typing, my header.ejs. That's what I want that's included. And then I want to close this off with a closing tag. So that is my include. I want to do the same thing, just copy paste, please. Copy paste. I want to do the same thing with my bottom nav, but I want to do a footer element, and I'm going to put my include in there, and let's change this from components header to components footer. Right? So kind of my header and my footer. And again, there's other ways of doing this, but you can see that that's all I'm doing here. My components, I put them in the wrong place, by the way. I put the header and footer in content. Let's fix that. So I'll just drag and drop that. And footer here. Nice, right? Header and footer. And we should test this to see if it works, right? We should test this out. So, so far, so good. It's the exact same. The only thing we've done is include a header and a footer. And if it didn't work, it's going to show up. Let's see if we can do that. So again, go back out to my page and refresh. And if everything goes well, we're good. If things don't go well, not good. Let me show you how it fails. Let's fail first. So if I failed, let's say I had the wrong thing in here. Instead of components, I changed my footer to content. What would I do instead? This is wrong. Okay, I'm telling you, I want to fail. So I want to show you what the failure looks like. So if I did that and if I refreshed, you can see I'm going to get this really weird thing that says, I don't know what you're talking about. All right. That there is no content footer.ejs. We can't load this thing. You'll get this ugly message. That's okay. But it tells you exactly what it's where you have to look. Look, it's going to content footer on line 25 of my template, and that's clearly wrong, right? It says could not find the include file. That's the error you're getting here. And this is okay for us to display this kind of error now when we're developing, but later on, we want to hide this problem if there's an issue. So going back to this, we can undo this problem and go back to components. And if I refresh now, then it's going to be fine. All right, so that is how you do your kind of like partials for footer and header, and it's very similar to what we're going to do in content in a second. Let's put this up on GitHub. So again, control backtick. I'm going to go to git add dot, and then git commit -m, and I'll say something like added header and footer partials. Git push. Okay, let's watch this thing. If I push it up, remember that my repository, my GitHub repository, is automatically connected to Heroku. Let's watch the changes happen on Heroku when I do this. If I go up online, and if I go to Heroku, and in my Heroku, if I look at activity, this is my Heroku app. If I look at activity, my Heroku app, you'll see that there's a build in progress, and I can watch my build. So this is what happened. So it's build succeeded, blah, blah, blah. It looks through, and then, hey, it's up to speed, and we're good to go. If there was an issue, we would have a problem that would show up here. We don't have a problem. It says build succeeded. And if I go back to my build, right, so up here on Heroku, and if I refresh, then we should see the same thing that we saw before. But this time we're using partial pages as opposed to partial nav and partial footer, as opposed to one big page. All right, questions around partials. That's really it about partials. It's like splitting up your code into smaller piece parts. And I think this is really, really good. Anybody have an issue? Okay, so if there's no issues, we'll continue. So now what we want to do is kind of do the same thing with our content, right? But I need a switching mechanism. So how does the page know, which is my template, how does it know what router is sending stuff in? Well, right now, the only variable that we're sending in is the title variable, right? See this title variable? It's the only way we know what it is. And title is okay, but title can be whatever we want. I want to also send some information about the page, right? So remember, I can send multiple pieces of information, right? So if I go back to my routes, and if I look at my index.ts, in my index.ts right now, this is the object right here that I'm sending to the page. So every page gets a slightly different object, right? The object, it's a JavaScript object, right? And the JavaScript object itself only has one property. In this case, it has a title property. I can add as many properties as I want to the bag or the container, that is going to go to the page, right? So let's add another property called page. And let me explain why. Notice that home, it says home, and about says about. But what if I want to say my title is about us, and my projects is our projects, and services is our services? They're slightly different, aren't they? But the page information will be the same. So what I want to do is say something like this. So I can say page. Am I back, Vahya? Hopefully I am. Yes, good. So I can say page, and then I can say the page name is home. Notice that I'm making it lowercase. And I can do the same thing for all of them. So I'm adding an element or a property to the object. So I can say, let's just make copy paste here for now. I'm adding one little property to all of them. And what I can say is that these are home page, but this is the about page. Hold on here. I'll explain what I'm doing in a sec. And this is the projects page. And this is the services page. And this is the contact page. Right? So this is just a way of identifying which page I'm going to go to. Right? But now I can be fancy about the title. Like, for example, about us. Right? My projects or our projects. Right? Our services. Right? And contact us. Right? You can see that they're a little bit different. It doesn't have to have a pattern anymore. But this is exactly right. This is exactly the same. These things here are perfect, right? I know. I saw it cut in and out. Hopefully you guys are okay now. So that's it. Home, about, project, services, and contact. These are perfect, only one word. But these can be one or more words, and it gives us flexibility about how this is going to look. Let's save this and see what this means. So if I save this right now, and I go back out to my local page, which is here, and if I refresh, you can see that it's going to say, welcome to the home page. If I go to about, it's going to say, welcome to the about us page. So you can clearly see that this is taking effect. But up here, it says about us. The title is about us, right? But the page is the about page. So I can send that information across, okay? And there's advantages to doing this. So now this is kind of how it looks, right? This is kind of how it looks. This is nice, okay? This gives me some information. And what I can do in my index.ejs is whatever the page is, hear me out, I can use that as an include onto what I want to do. So let's make some pages. I want to make an about page, a contact page. I want to make all those types of pages. And I can then go ahead and instead of having the same message for the template, I can use a multi-template approach by using multiple includes. Let's see how that looks. So let's go into content and make those pages up. So I want to make a new file called home.ejs. I want to make another file called about.ejs. Now, let me explain something here. It's super important that you make these names one word and that match what the page convention we just used. So that's important. Okay, so let's go new file and contact.ejs and projects. And finally, services. Okay, so those are the different pages here. And what I want now is let's copy my index.ejs, this idea here, this container. Let's copy this container, right? Copy this one. And I'll copy it into my home page for a second. And this is the one for my home page, right? So, oops. So this home page, it's gonna say welcome to, and I don't have to put the title in here. I know this is for the home page, so I can say welcome to our our site, right? I can make it customized now, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I can go into my contact page. And I can say, welcome to our, we can say, contact us, right? Contact us, right? So I can start off the contact page, right? And I can do the same thing with our about page, right? About us. Because I can make it specific now compared to how it was before. Projects. You can say our projects. And finally, we can also go in there and say, for now, our services. So this is kind of a mini page, right, where you can kind of put in your own details. Now, for your assignment 1, this makes a perfect example of you can put in all your images here, and it breaks up the big template, so it makes it a lot easier than kind of having everything in one page. It's a little bit too crazy, right? So these are kind of little template pages, or content pages, if you will, partial files, that we can use to kind of inject inside of our index.ejs. But now we have to do some work over here. And the way to do this to make it so that we don't use a switcher like I've used in the past is do something like this. So first, let's make a new section. Well, we're going to call this our main content, right? This is where our main content goes. Again, this is just a little bit of a comment here. And then in our template, we can go and use main as an element, right? So in our main element, we can go %- I want to include, and now this is where we can get fancy. We can say that, I want to go into our content pages, but what I want to do is I want to add the page information, all right? So I can say plus whatever the page information is going to be. So content / and then the page name, right? Plus, and I can make up the page information where I say page .ejs. So I kind of make that page come alive, right? As opposed to have a hard-coded page. This is where the page comes in. So I can say, hey, when I go to the main content, go to the content / home page, right? I'm going to go to main content. I'm going to go to content / services page, and so on. And that's how I would do it. So this is great because it gives us a lot of control. Let's see if this works. So save this, right? Here we go. And if everything works, if we didn't mess up, then if I go back out, remember that page, this page thing is coming from our router. Our router has a page that I'm injecting every single time, right? So that's where it's coming from. You need to have it in every single route that you want this to work in, okay? So again, if I go back to our local pages, which is here, and I refresh, if we did everything right, then we're going to see something. If we didn't do something right, then we're going to see a blank like this. Okay, so home, blank, about, blank, projects. Okay, that came out, project worked, and services, blank, contact, blank. So something went wrong, right? What happened here, and how do we troubleshoot this one? Because I'm not getting any feedback that there's an error. Well, let's see what we get here. So we're going to go back to Node and see what happens when I try and list it. It says, well, I'm going to go to my services page, and it's trying to read the different pages. It says content app, and then it's going to go through it. So this is kind of a way we can start tracing, right? So /about, it says content /app, right? And so on. So something is wrong here, right? Because what's happening is there's something that either hasn't been saved. Look at all these pages that haven't been saved. On the left, look, here. Hasn't been saved, hasn't been saved, hasn't been saved, but project was saved. That's why we're getting blanks, right? They're existing. We didn't get an error that they don't exist, but we didn't save any of them. So up here on the top, there's also hints that these pages were never saved. These pages here, these 4 pages never saved. Projects was saved. Let's save them. So here, just save. Here, save. Or you can go up here to the top, right, where it says save all, and then it just saves all the pages. And if I did that now and go back here and refresh, right, as an example, not here, sorry, here, our local copy, and refresh, then you can see that now all the pages are working as they should. Okay, so that's kind of a way of doing that. Okay, so now that we've got all those pages separated, we can put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to go to PowerShell. I'm going to click clear. There we go, it's back. I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m. I'm going to say created partial content pages. Git push, and that'll push it up to GitHub. And then let's watch what happens on Heroku, right? Because Heroku, it's got to work there too. So again, going back, if I'm going to go back up to here, you can see that, let's go back to the project. So I'm going to go back to activity, and you can see that this is something going on here. Let's go to view build progress, where it's going to show us our build, and you can see that it's building everything again. And if everything goes well, then it's going to build it. And when it's done, it's going to give us a little link. There's our little link. And it's going to say, wait for it. When it's done, it's going to say build finished. And then when it's done, if I go back to my online link and refresh, we should still have the exact same things, but now it looks different, right? It's going to have about us, project, services, and contact. And this is what we wanted. Why? It's a specific message. I can inject specific details in here about my project or about my stuff, where before I was just switching. All right, so what I mean by that is I was just injecting the same title through the entire thing, and that's just not as good. So this is how you break stuff up into content partials and components partials. One last change I want to make is all my top, this is a restructuring change, okay, which is going to change some of my stuff, all right? So this is potentially going to break my site. I want to restructure my application so that routes are a capital R, views are a capital V, right? I want to take this routes and views and make them capital. Can I do it? So is it going to let me do it on Windows? And as long as I'm running, I'm just going to put it out there, my app, sometimes it'll prevent me from doing it. So if I want to right click, and if I go to rename, and I want to say from roots, I want to go to capital R roots like this, it might prevent me from doing it. And it's going to break in a second. Let's do the same thing with views. So views, right click, and we're going to rename into views. Let's do that as well. Now what this does when I rename, if I go back to my app.ts, this is wrong now, right? This in my app.ts, you can clearly see that there's something that's changed here. What we want is my directory name and views, capital V, right? Okay, so capital V for views. This is important. If I did this and save, right? And also routes. Look at the routes. Routes automatically updated. It changed the routes where I'm importing my routes to capital R. This is important because I've actually changed the name of my stuff. So whenever I change any names, it should be something that we want to change. And I'm making these change ahead of time. But take a look at this. What's happened? Views didn't change. Even though I changed it, it didn't change. Why is that? Hold on a second. Let's revamp that again. Rename. And I want to rename this to views. What happened? How come it's not changing? Well, routes changed. Well, because we're using it, right? It says error, operation not permitted, rename, because we're using it right now. All right, I'm using this file right now. Okay, so that's an important consideration. The way we would be able to do that is if I stopped it, right? So I'm going to go sometimes into Node, and I'm going to kind of stop using this thing altogether. I'm stopping it from running. And then let's see if I can do it now. So refactor, rename, and I want to change this to views. Now that worked. Notice that it worked now after I stopped NodeMon from running because NodeMon is serving up these files. Okay, so I'm renamed these things client, routes, and views. Yay. And I want to make another structural change here. I want to make, well, a bunch of them, but let's go to the next one. If I'm already stopped, let's do this because I want to revamp our structure a little bit. I want to add our model, view, and controller because we're going to talk about MongoDB this week. So let's do that. So I want to make a new folder called, and I want to make it here in the root. So click down here, please, not over here. Click down here. Go here and make a new folder called models, right? Because models is a new folder. Remember, because we're going to use the model view controller framework, and models are our class that connects to our database, right? And what we also want to do is we also want to make something called controllers. So again, click down here and add a new folder called controllers. And our controllers are also another folder we want. And all of this, controllers, models, routes, and views, all of this stuff should be inside of a server folder. Let's do that. That's a major change. Let's do that first. This is a kind of a restructure that we're doing. Okay, so again, I'm going down here and I'm going this, and I'm changing this to server, right? And hold on, one more little folder. I want to make a new one called config, and press that one in there as well. So those are my new folders: config, controllers, models, routes, server, and views with a capital V, right? And client with a capital C. All those things should be the same way they're working. So far, it's not going to change anything from running because we haven't done anything with the stuff we have. Let's do our first major change. I'm going to put our app.ts and our app.js and our app.js map. I want to move this into my config folder. Okay, that's going to be a major change. Let's do that first. So, I'm going to highlight these things, and then we're going to reroute them inside of our config folder, like so. So that's the first major change. It says, are you sure you want to move these to the following to the config folder? The answer is move. Yay. Now, we have some issues. TypeScript is telling us that something is wrong with this root now. And it is, right? We can't do a /roots. Roots would be on the same level if it was like that. We have to go up one more. So it's going to be double dot roots. That's what's changing there. And by the way, if this is confusing to you, don't panic. We're going to fix all these, but I want to point this out because this is what we need to do. So config, that's where our app is going to be. Index.ts, that doesn't work anymore because index is got to look in our app. So you may have to add /config app because that's our new root. So index did it automatically for me, but it looks inside of config and then inside of app. Okay. Next change. There's a couple of other things too, right? Because my config is there and my router is over here, routes, then in my app.ts, it looks up for routes, but it also has to look up for a bunch of other things, client and views. Let's do that. So it's going to be /views, right? Views. And then /client right? As well as .. node module. So this is something where that's going to be a change to everything. So the path is different now because we've added another layer, another folder, okay? So far, so good, guys. This is the first piece. Okay, now, before we move anything else, because we're going to do another major change in a second, let us test this new structure. So again, I'm going to control backtick, and I'm going to just run node mod. If it doesn't work like this, it's okay. It means something hasn't been saved. Let's save everything. Index hasn't been saved. App hasn't been saved. All right, let's save all, and then hopefully that'll run afterwards, okay? And when it's running, after it's run, like so, right, then let's take a look and see if we can get to the page. So locally first. Locally, we're looking at the page. Let's refresh, and we should still be good. Okay, this is locally. We've refactored our project structure again, yet again, and we're done. We did this because we need to start supporting model view controller as we're doing MongoDB. Okay? Nice. App.js. Okay, that all has to be sorted out. Let's say make sure that's saved, right? Or sorry, let's just kill this page. We don't want to look at it. Don't save that one because it's going to do our own thing, right? As an example, and make sure client looks okay, right? All this is okay. Okay, so major change number one, we've refactored so that our app is now inside of a config folder. So it reads like this, application config. We always go on the inside and read to the outside. Application config, right? Okay. Our index view, our home content, our footer component. That's how we work. That's how we look at it, okay, when we do the structure. We're working at this new structure that we're doing. We don't have anything in controllers right now, and we don't have anything in models right now, right? So if I was to put controllers and models up on GitHub, question for you, for the people that are here, would GitHub retain controllers and models, or would GitHub get rid of them? What would it do right now if I put this up like this? And how about our nice server? Would it keep server, or would it be gone? What do you think? Server has nothing in it too. Server has nothing in it, and controllers and models have nothing in it. What would happen, guys? Anyone have an idea? Well, it wouldn't be kept. You need a git keep file for these, right? So if I want them to be kept, let's say if I want controllers to be kept or models folder to be kept, I need a git keep file. Let's put that in there for now. So controllers, I'm going to add a new file called git keep. All right, so it's empty now, but it doesn't matter. And models, let's add a new file called git keep. And so far, so good. Yeah, they're empty. But one thing we want to do now is do a major restructure. A major restructure is where I take my views, roots, models, controllers, and config, and put them inside of server. Let's do that one. That's a major change, right? So let's do that. So views inside of server, routes inside of server. Right now, views didn't work, right? Why? Because views is being used right now. So control backtick. Let's break this for a second. Stop doing this and do it again. Views inside of server, right? Oops. Let's put them inside of somewhere else. Let's try that again. So views inside of server, right? Roots and views. And models instead of server. Make sure you're copying and pasting properly, guys, or moving, drag and dropping. And finally, controllers inside of server. And config inside of server. Now we have major problems. Major, right? Because we have a much simpler top level structure, but we have a lot of little changes we have to make. Okay, so again, we're going to save all. That's important. Let's go back and start with index. What does index look like? Well, now index should point inside of server, config, app. app server config, application server config, right? That's what it looks at, okay? And then let's look in views. Views is the same, no problem there. Routes, same, no problem there, right? Models, nothing in there yet. Controllers, nothing in there yet. Config, oh no, okay, this is our first issue. So app.ts, what is it looking at now? App, okay, this is still okay, right? Why? Well, not this one, right? This is not okay, and this is not okay, but this is okay because app goes up one to views. That's okay. So that goes to here, right? But these two are not okay. You need dot dot slash like this. So these are something that has to change, dot dot slash. And same thing goes here, dot dot slash, because these are actual roots that have to be in there, right? So save. All right. And now that we have this, these are good. This is good because this hasn't changed relative to config. None of these have changed. These are all, they're still okay. And now we should be able to run nodemon. Let's go clear, and let's run nodemon again. And let's say if it runs, and if it runs, we're here like this. It looks like it's good. Let's look at something local, and let's go and check locally and refresh. And if everything went well, then we're still golden, my friends. We're still golden. Okay, now this is a great place to put it up on GitHub again. So again, go back to PowerShell. And we'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say restructured project to support MVC. MVC means model view controller structure. That's what we've done here. And then I'll say git push. And now this is going to push everything up to GitHub, right? And remember, what we're going to do is going to watch Heroku so that everything is okay, right? So let's go back up to Heroku. And we're going to go to Heroku, and we're going to go to activity. We're going to see that there's something that's spinning here in Heroku. I'm going to click on view build progress. And now we're going to see if it's going to be okay. By the way, sometimes when we restructure with Heroku, it messes up, all right? It's going to try and figure things out. But if you do things, you know, kind of in a controlled and logical manner locally, it should be okay remotely on Heroku. Sometimes you need to create a whole new repository. Sometimes you need to do other things. But for the most part, it's the exact same structure that I'm showing you here. Okay? All right, so now that we've done this, let's check it on Heroku Online. So this is now, it's online. Let's check it. We're good. And now you can see that it knows about our structure, even though we've restructured. If I look at inspect, Control-Shift-I, and if I go to sources, you can see still there's nothing that changed on this side because as far as the browser knows, it's still going to my app.ts. Nothing else has changed on this side. We don't see the back end here. We only see the front end. All right, this is awesome. This is great. Okay, so now we're set up nicely to set up MongoDB. Now, notice the structure. I've given you a new way of connecting to, I restructured early for you guys. And I've done it early because next week when we get together, we're going to do more advanced stuff with MongoDB, and I want to make all these things work well. Okay, so now going back to the PowerPoint, what the heck is Mongo and why are we using it? Well, what Mongo does really briefly in 5 minutes, it uses something called NoSQL. NoSQL does not use structured query language, but actually it was created so it could allow you to use JavaScript everywhere and simplify the way we make use of databases. Sometimes you don't need a relational database. All we need is a way of keeping track of documents. And the way we would do that is we can use something called NoSQL database. And MongoDB is one of the most popular NoSQL databases out there. And so that's what this topic of this week is all about. The other stuff I talked about so far today, it's not about Mongo. It's about assignment 1. And how do I make assignment 1? I get maximum marks for Tom. That's what it is. That's what I made for you for this little video. Because I want to help you with assignment 1. Once you've got assignment 1 done, it's basics, and then you can add to it with this stuff. Okay, because this is not required for assignment 1. This is all assignment 2 stuff that I'm showing you here. All right, so cool, NoSQL, everything is great. And it talks about it's not a relational database. It does more like, there's a paradigm that kind of relates tables to documents. That's what they're called in NoSQL databases. right? So here they talk about from the book about what a document would look like. Document-based databases is what we're talking about now, with a very JSON-like structure. That's what this looks like. But actually, it's not JSON, it's BSON for MongoDB. So this JSON-like structure, it has a couple things. It has a title, comments section, as an example. And this is a property, and the value is here. So it's kind of like key value pairs. That's how it's set up. That's what the document looks like. This is what the document, like a record, would look like inside of MongoDB. A record is simply a document, okay? And a collection is a table. That's how it works out. A table of records or a collection of documents. That's the new paradigm, okay? So that's how it works. So that we use JavaScript everywhere. I'm going to keep going down here. It talks about how this works and how NoSQL happens. This is for you to read. And then we get into MongoDB, what that is. It was back in 2007 that they were using, that when Node was being made. And remember, we talked about 2007, 2008 timeframe with the Google V8 engine. They kind of created a document-based database again called MongoDB. It stands for, or it comes from the word humongous, MongoDB, and that's how it was made. And basically what we use key value data stores or key value pairs to kind of store our data. That's what it really is. And we use something called BSON format, and BSON format includes something called an ID, _ID, with a unique object ID for each document inside of all the collections. That's what they look like, okay? So that's kind of how it looks. And what we need to do, again, starting this week, is we need to kind of connect and install MongoDB. So let's do that first. So let's get that into that. Now, I've already done this video in a different way, but now we're doing something else. So I'm going to go to mongodb.org. Let's go there. And if you look at mongodb.org, then what I want to do is I want to, where it says software, community server, I want to download the community server. And you can see that on the right, it tells you the available download is 4.46 for Windows, right? So you can definitely download this community server. And in the documents that I had before, it talks about how to do that. One thing you need to know is when you install MongoDB, then what you need to do is inside of the root of your C drive, you must have a data folder. That is one of the tricks. And inside the data folder, you must have a DB folder. If you don't have a data and a DB folder, then you will not be able to kick off MongoDB. So that's the kind of the way it's done. So now, if you follow the installation instructions from here and do not include MongoDB Atlas, there's a piece that includes a way of using or watching MongoDB. I also talked about how to not install MongoDB as a service, but rather something you kick off with your command prompt. So what you should be able to do after the installation starts is something that looks like this. If I start off my command prompt, and I recommend a separate command prompt, by the way, for this one. And if I type in the word mongod, like so, mongod, which is Mongo daemon, or the Mongo service, that's what this really stands for. And if I press enter, and if I did everything correctly, you should see that the service starts on port 27017 after your installation, okay? And I can't do any MongoDB kind of work without doing this, okay? So that's the first part. You have to make sure that mongod works as an example in your installation. So mongod. Next, I want to pull up a separate terminal. Again, I'm going to use the command prompt for now just to demonstrate this, where I can access Mongo. So if I type in the word Mongo, okay, so there's two different commands here, Mongo and mongod, right? Mongo and mongod. Mongod is the server, Mongo is the client. So I'm running a little client here, and if I type in Mongo and press enter, if I did everything correctly, it's going to find the Mongo server on here, right? If it did it right, and connect to it, right? That's the first thing it's going to try and do. If it has a problem, right, and it may, and it hangs, as an example like this is doing, sometimes what we need to do is we need to restart the service or whatever. Because this, my friends, if you have an issue like this, something is not right, right? And I'm experiencing that issue right now. So what to do is Control C and stop the server. If you did that, it'll kick you out of the service, right? Let's try it again. So if I go mongod, start the server again, and I go back to the service and type in Mongo, right? It should take you right there. Sometimes that's required, okay? If you want to clear the screen in Mongo, you can type in CLS, just like we do in the command prompts for clear screen. That's going to take you here. The first command you should know in Mongo is show DBS, which is show databases. And we can see that I have a few databases here, okay? And I've used examples before. The example that's inside of the course shell is something called Books229, right? I've also have a movie store and a sports store, and I've got a bunch of different examples here. I have a computer store, a lot of different things, from before. So let's make something else like we're going to do for this semester. So it's this semester stuff, right? So I want to be able to promote some kind of product as an example, and it's books. As an example, I can do books, I can do movies, I can do computers. What else could I do, guys? I'm going to kind of reach out to you guys. What other things do you like that you want to buy online? What do you guys buy online right now? Anybody have an idea? And I'll make that kind of store with you guys. Doesn't matter which one. What are you guys thinking? Again, it could be anything, right? Let's think about you being creative for a second while we do this. Anybody? I'm going to choose something boring if you guys don't choose something more exciting, right? All right. No one's saying anything. That's okay. So let's make something. Clothes. Okay, Clayton. Wonderful. A clothes store, right? Alex says computer parts. So I kind of done computer parts before, so I could do that. But I like that, a clothing store or something like that. We'll call it, clothing. Clothing maybe can include shoes, and clothing can include other stuff as well. What is called the clothing store, and that's what the thing will be. So the way to make a database is to basically use it. So we start off with use clothing store, right, as an example. And once we do that, it says switch to DB clothing store. So clothing store doesn't really exist yet, and we're switching to it. Well, how does this work? Well, as soon as we use it, we're going to create it in a second. Still, though, if I did a show DBS, you're not going to see a clothing store yet, right? And the reason why is we don't have any kind of document or collection in clothing store. So let's clear the screen again. And now what we want to do is we want to insert a new object inside of clothing store. So let's think about the things that we want to do. One thing I like to do whenever I make a new database is I want to think about what that kind of looks like. So let's pull up a notepad, and just for some planning, what I want to do is think about the stuff that's going to be in the clothing store. So one of the things that I want, I'm sorry, my internet was unstable there. One of the things I want is the name of the article, right? So maybe something like, some kind of description or name. So we'll say that we'll call this the first thing name. So these are our properties. So name is the name of the article. Maybe a description is what we have for the article of clothing. You can have a manufacturer or brand. Let's say the brand will be something that I want in there as well. And definitely the fourth one would be at least a price. Okay, so something like this. So those are 4 things that we want in our store: a name, a description, a brand, and a price. Okay. By the way, we could have chosen restaurant, selling food, or something else. You guys can maybe do that in your project in the second half of the semester. So name, description, brand, and price. Those are going to be our the structure of our items, and this is how our each document is going to be. So let's organize this. I think name, and then brand, and then description and price probably should be the right order. That's how I want to enter things. And let's give an example of how this would look. So I want to do something like this. I want to do kind of a curly brace, right? And I'm just using Notepad here, but you can use anything you want, right? Just so we can start describing stuff. Brand should be in quotations. All this stuff should be in quotations. So name, brand, description, right? And price. We're making up the document, what the document is going to look like for our database. And let's do our first name. So name, we can think about a a sweater. And let's look at some, to give us help, because hey, I'm not a clothing aficionado or anything like that. Let's look at a store that's online right now that we can kind of mimic, right? So let's go online and look at something like, I don't know, Old Navy or something like that. So if I looked at Old Navy, and Old Navy is owned by the Gap. Again, you might like it, you might not. I'm not advertising. I don't work for these guys. You told me you want to make a clothing store. Let's look at some men's clothing for now, and I want to shop. Remember, we can have any of these things. If I want to make a thing, I want to start off with tops, right? Oh, that's something else. Do we want to categorize our objects? Because we're going to have a lot of different categories of stuff. For example, maybe we want to make a category, now that I'm looking at this, right, of items, right? And this is something we may figure on doing. So let's go back to this. And so name, brand, right? And then the category. So we want to put colons here, right? And let's go and we'll say category, right? We can put these in different, kind of ranges, right? As an example, we know brand. Let's call this brand is going to be, we're going to say Old Navy is the brand, Old Navy, right? And the name is going to be some kind of thing, but we're going to say the category is going to be tops. So category is tops, and you can see that here's the name, slim fit, non-stretch. I'm literally taking the name from them, just giving an example, so I don't have to think about it. Slim fit, non-stretch cotton shirt for men. Awesome. Okay, and you guys can do it for yourself. If you're a lady, you can do one of these for you too. Okay, we'll do a couple of them. So that'll be the name, right? Slim fit, non-stretch cotton shirt for men would be the name. The category would be tops, right? And the description, if there was a further description in here, as an example, then you could put that. And then it says color. Look at this. Here's product details, right? And material and care, fit and sizing. All these things are extra things that you can include in clothing. It's much more complex, as an example, than what we've used before. So let's say we want to not include some of this, but size and color might be something that we want to include as some object. So for now, let's go into category tops, description. We might want to maybe not do description, but actually add in color, right, as an example. And we also want to put in size, because size and color should be something that clothing, all of clothing has, right? So maybe, color is blackjack for now. That's the color we want, at least for now. I mean, you can make a selection of colors. If there's other colors, you can make it so that it's an array of colors that you can choose from, right, as an example. And then sizes, let's just choose medium as the default size, but you can have an array of sizes in here as well. So we can say size, right? And again, for now, we'll just choose one size, which is medium, right? And then the price, right? The price is $34.99. That's insane for a little shirt. But let's suppose that is the price. Let's put that in, and we can again put that in quotations or actually have it as a value. So there is your first document, all right? And this is how I would do it. I would start off like this, right? Now, this is a first example. We may want to exchange size for a array and color for an array. For now, though, we're not going to do that. We need commas between all this stuff because it's a document. So let's put comma, right? Okay, so this is what it would look like, okay? And this is the object that we want to inject. Okay, this is the object. So what we want to do is we want to kind of put it or surround it around brackets. Okay, like this. So this is what it would look like. Okay, and the command is db database dot, right, and then the name of your collection, right, which would be, so think about what the collection would be. this could be, each collection could be different. We're just going to say clothing, right? Dot insert, and then the data would be here. All right, so db.clothing.insert, and then whatever data it's going to be. So copy all this. And if I go back to my command line, and if I paste, and if I press enter, right, it says right result is 1, right? And if I do a db.find, right, by itself, db.find, then it's going to say, okay, I got to specify where, db.where, clothing.find. I want to find clothing, and it shows me my first object, which is this. But it looks really ugly. So what a lot of times we do is we make this nicer. We make it pretty. So we say db.clothing.find.pretty. I know my wife would be very happy that I'm doing clothing compared to computer parts, right? Because then we can look at, things that she might like for me, like a slim fit, non-stretch cotton shirt for men, which probably wouldn't fit me at this stage because of COVID fat. But anyways, here it is, right? So, especially medium, definitely medium will not fit at this point, okay? But you can see that that is what we've done. We've added in a brand new, object inside of our database, and it's taking this form. So why am I doing this? Because the next step, guys, that I go in the videos is I need to make a model to connect to this thing. Now, I'm going to run out of time here, right? And I can't do everything in the video that I do online, but the next step is to make a model that models this. This is an example that we did locally, and I need to make a model class that does all this as well, okay? So I'm pointing this out because I want to start thinking about how you would do it as well. How would you do this thing if you were going to make the model for whichever object or whatever you would have, right? So first things first, we need some stuff to connect to the database with, okay? We need some additional support for MongoDB. And the way we would do this is, as an example, right? We want to install new things in our configuration, right? So inside of our configuration now, let's go back. This is what we want. We don't have this yet. And we have an example here in a notepad that I used. This is a notepad thing. We're going to come back to this again because this is what I want, right? So cool. Let's get back to code now. Again, we want to make our dream into a reality, right? And the way we go, I'm going into config, into app, and I need to add additional support. So what I need is something called Mongoose. Mongoose is another package that allows me to connect to MongoDB, right? And I want to add that in. So let's add in Mongoose, okay? And for those people who don't know, again, this is all listed in our course. But if you want to look it up, you can look at Mongoose, which looks like this. Mongoose.js is an object relational mapper equivalent. And what this does is we need to add Mongoose into our configuration for our app. And what we need is Mongoose, right? But we're going to do it the TypeScript way. Let's do it. So again, I need to install it inside of our package.json. It doesn't exist yet. So what is this going to look like? So again, control backtick. We're going to go back to this. And I'm going to say yarn add Mongoose. All right. And if I do that, we add Mongoose support right there, Mongoose. Okay, that's the first step. Let's add a new module to support connection to MongoDB. First things first, Mongoose. Okay, without Mongoose, we cannot connect to MongoDB. So we need that, all right? What else do we need? Well, we need support for Mongoose, maybe some kind of dev dependency. Let's see if we can add that in. So again, it's yarn add at types, chances are it's like this, / Mongoose, right? And then -- dev to specify we want it in this section, all right? So press enter. And then sure enough, we have a Mongoose at type, which we can use for good code hinting. And you can see that the code hinting is slightly behind the version. The latest version is 5.12. The code hinting is 5.10. It's pretty much the same, pretty close. All right, so that's the first step. The next step is configuration. And this is something that I do inside of your app. If I go to app.ts, then at the top, after we have our logger, let's add in support for Mongoose. So it would be like this: import Mongoose from Mongoose. Okay, that's first step. Next step, we need to have a configuration that allows us to specify where our server is. Right now, we're going to connect locally, but next week we're going to connect remotely. How do we do that? So we need a new item inside of our config called DB, DB configuration, database configuration. So let's add a new item, new file. So new file, and we'll call this db.ts. Okay, there's db.ts, there it is. And under db.ts, what we want to do here is some prep. We want to create basically a bunch of constants to connect to, right? So let's go into the top, and we're going to say, I want to make, remember, you don't have to just to export a whole thing. We can export one at a time. I can say export const, and what I want to export here is some kind of local URI. So let's call this local URI, right? Which we're going to call the following: MongoDB : / localhost / the name of your database, right? In our case, we're calling it clothing store. Okay, clothing store. And we also want to, for now, we can add other things. We can also have a remote URI, right? Or some other URI as well. We can have multiple things here that we can add in. Right now, all we need is this, okay? We don't need anything else other than this, okay? So just this part. We're going to add more to this later on. So now that we have this, okay, now that we have our local URI being MongoDB localhost clothing store, what I can do is I can connect to it. So going back to my app.ts, right? I've included Mongoose, right? And once I include Mongoose, what I can do is I can connect to my local URI, okay? So let's start thinking about how, no, it's not for assignment 1. I'm just talking about assignment 2, starting off assignment 2, because I've covered most of what you need for assignment 1. That kind of thing is what I'm looking for. So let's go into the stuff that I'm doing here. So I want to connect to my my DB, my database configuration. So this happens all before Express. Will we need to add the other projects to our first assignment? No. Okay, so this is for assignment 2 now. So let's think about this, right? I want to talk about my index router, and underneath my index router, I have a bunch of stuff. I have my Express configuration. This is really my app configuration. That's what this is, app config, right? And then what I want to do is, after I've configured my application, I want to talk about my DB configuration. So here's my database configuration. And the way the database configuration is going to look is like this: import star, this is a new structure, as db config, right, from ./db. Isn't this awesome, right? So what does this mean? I'm importing, but instead of importing a module, I'm importing my own file, is what I'm doing. I'm going into ./db. ./db is here. I don't have to put the TS or the JS. And I'm calling anything I get from there. I'm going to wrap it inside of an object called dbconfig. Okay, that's what's happening. And then I can simply do the following. I can say, okay, Mongoose, hey Mongoose. Hey Mongoose, right? I want to connect, let's try that again. Hey Mongoose, I want to connect, right, to dbconfig local URI. See how local URI came up? That's awesome, right? It read from my file automatically. Now what I need to do is add some connection options, and you can get these connection options instead of trying to figure them out on your own. You can get them from our documentation online. It's just these options right here, right? That I'm going to copy paste from online. So I'm going to copy these things. I'll put this in chat for you guys if you're following along. It's just this stuff, right? And I take this, right, and I'm going to put inside of here. That's our connection. Now what we want to do is we want to detect that we've connected. So the way that works is I'm going to say something that looks like this. I'm going to say const our database. We want a database representation. That's equal to our mongoose.connection, right? That's what it's going to be. And we're going to say db.on. On is like add event listener. On error, right? Well, we want to shoot an error to the console. We're going to say console.error.bind. And we're going to say that we're going to bind to the console, right, with some kind of connection error. Okay, that's all that is. But how about if I connect properly? I want to do a db.once. When I open, I want to do a function as a callback that basically states that I've connected. That's all it does. So when I open my connection for the first time, right, then I can do a console log that says connected to MongoDB, right? And we can basically say if I want to now, right? I'm using single quotes. Let's use a template string because we're using ES6. So we're going to say template string is the backtick character, or we can say $, right? Curly brace, and then db config dot local URI, right? So we can say that. And that local URI is going to give us our path, right? Which is MongoDB localhost clothing store. But that would be okay. But maybe what we want to do is just going to say, you know, kind of locally, our Mongo connected to MongoDB at and some kind of other thing other than local URI. Well, we can program that in my db.ts. So in here we can have an extra, and we can add more. We can say const, instead of just local URI, we can have in our host, right? The host name, if you will, or something else like that that helps us out. So we can say something like our host name. That's going to equal to localhost, right? In the future, maybe host name is going to be MongoDB Atlas, but for now, we can use host name as localhost, right? So going back to our app.ts, we can say that db config, instead of local URI, we can just replace this with host name, and it finds it for us because we're using TypeScript. If you're using JavaScript, not going to show you anything. TypeScript, it's going to give you all the support you need. Awesome, right? All right, let's test this and see if it works. So let's go back. We're going to go back to Node, and let's see, are we connected? And sure enough, it says automatically that we are connected to MongoDB at localhost. This is important because in the future, we're going to connect to MongoDB at MongoDB Atlas or MongoDB at something else, right? So this is the connection that we want to make here. That's step one. Can we connect? And we have. Let's put this up on GitHub. So go back to PowerShell, and we're going to say clear git add dot git commit -m, and we're going to say added Mongoose to support MongoDB. Or we can actually say added support for MongoDB. Git push. Okay, so that's the first thing it does. So it connects locally. Now, I'm going to warn you that online now, because our service online is, you know, as an example, is connected to Heroku, it's going to error out. It's not going to have anything locally because there is no local host with with Heroku, right? Another thing I want to mention, because sometimes this happens, this is why I brought this example up as well, is we added support for Mongoose. Take a look at that. We added support for Mongoose here. And when we did so, our index.d.ts had a problem, right? Someone wrote this thing, right? We declared Mongoose, and it says, definitions of the following identifiers conflict with those of another file. In other words, in this case, for Mongoose, when they wrote the Mongoose module, right, which is down in here, this is a new thing, okay? Look at Mongoose also glowing red here inside of node modules. Under Mongoose, they already have the type definition. Guys, this is where it's going to go in the future because everyone is starting to use TypeScript. So TypeScript already has a definition for Mongoose inside of the Mongoose package, which means we don't need a separate @types for this one. Sometimes you'll get this weirdness happening. Let's remove Mongoose now, because we already have support inside of the regular module. And the way to do that, we've never done a removal before. Let's go back to our control backtick and let's do a removal. Remember that yarn has a bunch of different options, right? We could do a yarn add, like we've been doing, or a yarn, right, remove. And we can specify where it's coming from. Let's do that. So yarn remove @types / Mongoose, that's what we want to get rid of, --dev. From where? --dev. And if you look at the package.json file, right here, just to show you the effect of this, and if I press enter here, it just removes that from the dev, and we should have less problems now in our node modules. But, if we have any issues whatsoever, there's an issue that pops up here where it says Mongoose document, some weird stuff like this. Sometimes that happens. We don't care about this. We just want to get rid of this. Mongoose, from Mongoose. Sometimes this weirdness happens, and just don't let it bother you. This is just something from TypeScript, right, as an example. So and now we just fixed it. If you had that problem, I did, but not an issue. It looks like this. So now we're going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we're going to say removed type support for Mongoose. So that's what we did, git push. And that kind of details, see, notice how many pushes I did, how many commits I did. Did I commit anytime we made a change, anytime we added a new feature, I would do a push to GitHub. And that's what I want you guys to do as we're going forward. Okay. All right, we're going to stop there today because we've kind of gone beyond what I wanted to talk about. Let's look at what I said I was going to do with you guys. So I did a lot of the stuff that I wanted to, which was support for assignment 1. That's what I wanted to do. We pushed our project to Heroku, and we've also restructured our application with, partials, right, for TypeScript. One thing we didn't do today is we didn't really make a contact form. But that's easy to do. Any contact form will do. And I recommend take a look at the video. I actually go through the contact form for you up online. I recommend looking at the Bootstrap contact form. So getbootstrap.com. There is not a contact form, but a form, right? So if I go to docs, and if I look at, under components, and if I look in components under forms, it's not components, it's under content, actually they've separated now into forms. Forms, here it is. And if I look at overview, it talks about how to do form controls and a bunch of other stuff. And they even have an example form here that has a bunch of stuff in it. So you can actually get a form that looks like this and modify it to work for you. And this is what I would do if you and I had time in our, in our time together. And I kind of did this in the video from last year. Even though it uses the older version of Bootstrap, it's identical. So go ahead and use that. I recommend that. You can look at the new version of Bootstrap for a reference, but for the most part, everything except for this piece is the exact same. This piece means margin bottom 3, which is like 3 points of margin bottom, or 30 points if I'm not wrong, right? And the same thing goes with this. So each one of these has a bit of margin underneath each div tag. for the form. And this is how you'd make the form that you want to make. And you want to make it so it's not really necessary to be functional at this point, because if you notice, I say that the form that you're generating inside your contact page should include a short interactive form that includes the user, that allows the user to send you a message. The form does not have to be fully functional initially. However, it should be able to capture the information entered by the user and redirect them back to the home page. So how would you do this? You could do this with a client-side JavaScript that redirects you back to the home page. Client-side could be done by clicking a button. When you click the submit button, you use client-side JavaScript to move them back to the home page. That's just a redirect, like literally just a link to move them back to the home page. That's all I'm asking you to do. It doesn't really do anything. Right now, the form is just a placeholder for what we're going to do in assignment 2. Okay. Okay, really briefly, I'm going to override by one more minute, guys. Really briefly, what I want you guys to look at is the details for assignment 2. And if you look at the details for assignment 2 really quickly, all right, assignment 2 is built upon assignment 1. And assignment 2, what it says is you're going to be using assignment 1. This is June 18th, 2021. You're going to use the portfolio site you developed in assignment 1, and you're going to restructure the website to include a secure section of your site that displays a list of contacts. All right, so the list of contacts is something that we're going to make a list of contacts starting next week. And I'm going to help you with this thing because the contact list is something that I'm going to be doing with you one step at a time. It says, in addition to your site's main nav, you're going to modify your main nav. You're going to add in login and logout and stuff like this. We're going to do that over the next couple of weeks. So this is what it is. It's building upon what we've done in assignment 1. That means that's why it's super important to get assignment 1 done right and make sure it has all the stuff that I've asked you for in here. Can you console log a JSON object? Yes, you can. But be careful when you redirect. Sometimes what happens is you may want to console log the object, Alex, inside on the server side, not on the client side, because if you did it on the client side, it would reset the page and you'd lose your data, right? Okay, any questions around the stuff we've talked about before? So what have we covered? We've covered how to restructure your app, okay? Which is exactly what you want to do to get you going and stuff. We've covered how to connect to a MongoDB database and briefly, how would you make it work? We've covered how to put things up on Heroku this week, which is important and it's required for your application for assignment 1. We've also covered how to do partial pages, which is also required for assignment 1. We still have a couple of things. We have models that are empty, controllers that are empty. We're going to work on these next week as we continue to restructure and refine our application so that it's more robust and it's more streamlined to work in the way we're doing things. Okay, that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching this one. Again, please make sure you do your homework and watch the videos that are in the course shell for more information about what you need to do for this week's assignment and for next assignment. I'm going to stop streaming on YouTube now. And any questions for those of us